they asked me who I wanted to talk to, and I was completely biased because I am from Philly and I am a Philly fan. But also, Matt, I loved your Charlie Manuel story. I don't have a smart question, so before we pepper you with Phillies off-season questions, I just tell us about how the Charlie Manuel story came together, and tell people who didn't read it why they should.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie suffered a stroke back in September, and at the time there was a lot of concern for him. Phillies released a statement saying, please, share your thoughts and prayers for the next 24 hours. I mean, it was really touch and go for him, and he hasn't really talked at all in the months since, and there's been a reason for that, and that's because one of the residual effects of the stroke was he lost his ability to really speak for a while, and I went down to Florida to see Charlie and his wife Missy. Two people I've known for a long time now. I covered Charlie when he managed the Phillies years ago. Gratzy, you played for Charlie. I mean, I know you guys have interacted with Charlie over the years, and he's just a beloved figure in Philadelphia, a beloved figure in baseball. 60 years in the sport. He turns 80 tomorrow, actually. So I wanted to write something, and they let me come down there and spend some time with them, and it's really remarkable to see the progress he's made in his speaking. He's diagnosed with what you would call aphasia, which is a typical symptom of a stroke, and he's moving around fine. He's definitely speaking better, and his big goal is to be at spring training. He still has a job in the Phillies front office, and it's a little more ceremonial than anything, but he's still around a lot during the season. Would be there for a lot of home games. He'd go scout the minor leagues. He still loves being at the ballpark, and he's really made it his goal to be at spring training. And the feature was just about his sort of progress back and how baseball has really helped him. I mean, he loves to talk hitting. You guys know that if you've ever talked to him, he loves to talk hitting. And, for a while, he couldn't really talk about anything. And so talking about hitting and talking about baseball has really helped him get his speaking back.
Yeah, I love the article. You painted Charlie in exactly how Charlie is, like the whole, his accent and how people saw that as like ignorance, and he hated it. And you even mentioned that in the article, how he hated people seeing him because of his accent as ignorant, and how this like speech thing is, will kind of like lead into that too. So he's kind of dealt with that forever. Is there anybody opening day, since the Phillies didn't win the World Series last year, is there anybody that would get a bigger standing ovation than Charlie Manuel if he were to be called out of the dugout?
Yeah, I mean, no question. Like, if he's able and willing and wants to do it, him throwing out the first pitch or being there for the ceremonial first pitch on opening day against the Braves at Citizens Bank Park would be awesome. I know that they, I mentioned this in the story, they talked about, had they gotten to the World Series last year, whether Charlie could come up and come on the field for a first pitch. And obviously they didn't make the World Series, so they had to make that decision. But I think I don't know if he would have done it, because I think he was really, he was not in a great place. He was depressed because he didn't want people to hear, the way he was talking or not talking. And, he was concerned about that. But I think he's got a lot of confidence back. And, he's worked with speech therapists, and, has really put a lot of effort into, being able to be back around baseball. That is his life.
All right. So to the team, have they done enough? And before you answer, have they done enough? Could a team, because the Phillies and Braves, they're kind of right in there. They've shown that they're right together. The Braves were clearly regular season, they're a better team, but they beat them in the playoffs the last two seasons. Could the Phillies and Braves be teams that go in the beginning of the offseason, we're really good, we don't need to do anything? Or is that just never going to be something you're going to hear from a team?
I don't think they've done enough. I think that there are different considerations, and you can look at it a few different ways, Kratzy. I mean, the Braves have been active around the edges of their roster. The Phillies, re-signed Aaron Nola, and that really has been their only move outside some smaller things. But they're two really good teams. Like, there's no question. I mean, they're great rosters. Come postseason time, remember, it's a different sport. You're going with like your 18 best guys, right? Your 9 best position players and your 8 or 9 or so best pitchers to try to get through October. The regular season is very, very, very different. And if I'm the Phillies right now, I don't think I've done enough because I need more pitching depth. I think I need some outfield depth. I need guys that are going to help me in June and July and August when I have some injuries. They don't have the deepest roster when it comes to AAA. So I think it is a strong team. I think it is a team that should contend again for a National League championship. I do think there's work for them to do. And, we've seen the market move slowly. So it's not exactly the Phillies have 5 set starters. So they can't really offer someone, they were in on Yamamoto because, it was a rare occasion where you have a potential ace type pitcher who's 25 in the market. So every big market team was in on him. But I don't see them in on a big pitcher. Now they're just kind of waiting for other guys to sign, and they hope to get some depth, but they need it. I mean, they really do not have a ton of rotation depth right now.
Matt, what's the move then? What is the move? You just said they have 5 starters. The bullpen help? I mean, their lineup's pretty set, right? There's not a lot of spots in the lineup to go get somebody. So what's the move? Because they're kind of stuck. If you're saying they have 5, yeah, they were in on Yamamoto, but I mean, if they had the money for him, Snell, Montgomery, one of those big name pitchers, are they in on them, or was this a Yamamoto or bust for the Phillies? They got Nola back, and they're just going to say, hey, let's run it again, and hopefully the third time's a charm.
Yeah, AJ. I mean, I think right now the move is just kind of wait around and see what happens. I mean, they'll monitor the market for these top end guys, and if somebody's market craters, which I don't see that happening with a Snell or Montgomery or Hader, but if one of those guys finds that he doesn't have a great offer, maybe the Phillies swoop in, with a shorter term offer and try to get the guy here. But I don't see that happening. So I think right now they're just kind of waiting around, see what shakes out of the trees, and then go get your depth, later this month. Because yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're a pitcher who's trying to get a major league contract now or a guaranteed rotation spot, you're not looking at the Phillies and you're looking elsewhere. But at some point, those opportunities will dry up. And if you're a pitcher who wants to, be in an organization has a chance to win and say, okay, maybe I'll take this minor league deal. I'll go to AAA and know that I'm their 6th best option and that I'm most likely going to be in the majors at some point this year. But guys aren't signing those deals right now.
My question to you would be, there was a fan question here that we saw. Why would Bryce Harper even ask for an extension? And what's there to that? And, is that like a huge thing right now that he really needs and wants?
It's odd. I mean, it's a unusual case. I mean, I don't know that, he doesn't have an opt-out. There really isn't a ton of leverage on Bryce Harper's side. I don't think he's unhappy. That's definitely not the case. I do think there's an element, of Scott Boras, who was the one who kind of announced this, desire for an extension, wanting to get as much as he can for Bryce Harper. Remember that crazy offseason where it was Harper and Machado, for months and months and months, and we're falling along. And, Machado wanted an opt-out in his contract, and he negotiated that in there. Harper did not want an opt-out because he said he didn't want to answer questions anymore about this. He wanted to pick his place. He wanted to be devoted to that place and stay there forever. Machado, with his opt-out, he used it as leverage to get even more money from the Padres. And I think maybe there's maybe, I don't know if it's regret is the right word, but maybe at least from the Boras side that they wish they would have had that opportunity to negotiate a bigger deal. By AAV standards, Harper is, still near the top. I mean, his $330 million total is, I think, is still top 10 in baseball history. It's not, you could argue that he's underpaid given what he's done for the Phillies in recent years, first 5 years of the contract. But on the Phillies end, I don't think they see this as pressing business. To me, the guy who they want to extend right now, and I don't think these talks happen till spring, but they will happen, is Zack Wheeler, who will be a free agent after the 2024 season. They would love to keep Zack Wheeler in the organization. He's obviously one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. He's aged really well. His contract has been an incredible deal for the Phillies. And, I expect them to try to pursue an extension with Wheeler come spring training.
Okay, I was going to ask you about the Wheeler extension, so you teed it up nicely. Yeah, you wrote that was their most pressing piece of business that the Phillies have before opening day, and you set it up nicely there. So now I'm just going to ask you for your opinion. Do you think it gets done?
I think so, Hannah. I mean, I think there's interest in both sides. Wheeler really likes it in Philadelphia. He loves pitching with Aaron Nola. Now, Aaron Nola will be in Philadelphia for another 7 years. He has a strong relationship with Caleb Cotham, the pitching coach. They're raising a family here in Philadelphia area. So I think he really likes the familiarity of it. then again, it's not going to be a huge discount. I mean, this guy, if he does get to free agency after this year, even though he is in his mid-30s, we've seen teams, really go, deep for these top-of-the-line starters, even as they age. Jacob deGrom, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and maybe Wheeler's not on that tier, maybe just below. But it will take, significant dollars to re-sign him, and I think the Phillies are interested there. So, look, I thought the Nola deal was going to get done last spring, and it probably should have gotten done given, how everything ended up playing out. So it's not a slam dunk that the Wheeler deal gets done. But I mean, I think there's a good chance that they can find some common ground in the spring and make something happen.
And there's a little bit of extra pressure because the team I just mentioned, the Braves, Wheeler's from Georgia, so there might be some pressure there that he could go home for his age 35 to 37 seasons, and the Braves have money and they win. Anyway, that's my opinion, but so I think you're right. They need to get it done. Who are the two prospects that we need to actually watch for the Phillies? Guys that could come up, because I don't think Painter going to be – he's not available at all this season, right? He had Tommy John.
Might come back for some minor league games near the very, very end, but yeah, not an option in 2024.
So who are the two guys that we need to take a look at or make sure, could be big pieces for this team?
Well, the first answer will kind of be a cop-out because he did pitch in the playoffs last year, but Orion Kerkering, I think could be their closer at some point, during the season. He may not break camp as their closer, but he's going to break camp, I expect, on the big league team. And this is a guy who pitched maybe 3 regular season games for them last year, came up at the end. Great story. He is why I think that they are not signing, a top-end closer this offseason. They have that much faith in him. They have some pretty good pieces in their bullpen. So Kerkering is a guy who I think is going to factor in even bigger into their plans in 2024. And then the other guy I would list is Mick Abel, who, is one of the better starting pitching prospects in the sport right now. Doesn't really have sort of the notoriety, I guess, that Andrew Painter does, because Painter maybe was was the best or second best pitching prospect in baseball before he got hurt. But Abel, to me, is a guy, he pitched most of last season at AA. He finished at AAA. He still needs to work on his command. There's still some refining to do. He was a high school pick in the COVID draft, but he's right there. I mean, this is a guy who come summertime, if they have a need in the rotation, and he's pitching well in the minors, he will be in the majors. He will be an option for them, and they're not banking on it, but they're hoping that he is somebody that they can turn to if the need arises and if he's pitching well in the minors.
Matt, who is their closer going to be? Is it going to be Alvarado? Is it going to be Kerkering, like you mentioned? Is it going to be someone else, Dominguez? Is there somebody that they've slotted in as their closer going into spring training? I know Alvarado's closed before, but they kind of don't love him, it seems like, in that situation. They had Kimbrel last year. So who steps into Kimbrel's role and takes over that job?
I mean, AJ, they may not have a set guy coming out of camp.
That never works, though. That's never worked.
It does, yeah. and that's the thing, is that last year they didn't have a set guy, and Alvarado really did take over the job in April. Then Alvarado gets hurt in early May, and all of a sudden Kimbrel, who is probably a Hall of Famer, steps in, and in May, June, and July, and August was just nails for them. And he was their guy. And even when Alvarado came back, Kimbrel was still the guy in the 9th inning. So if I had to guess, they go back to Alvarado because that was his job at the start of last year. He probably is their best reliever right now. But I could very well see Kerkering becoming the guy in the 9th inning sometime during the season. That would not surprise me at all.
If you look on values, on Fangraphs values, not debating Fangraphs or not, they have the Phillies as the number 1 pitching staff in baseball. You watch this team day in and day out. They haven't made a lot of changes. They lost Kimbrel, whatever he did in the playoffs. He did well during the season. Do you agree? Or are you jaded because you watch too many Phillies games and you're kind of a negative Nelly?
You know me too well. I don't know if they're the best pitching staff in baseball. I think they're one of the best. I mean, the 5 guys they have in the rotation, and yes, I'm counting Christopher Sanchez, who, from July on was one of the best starters in baseball for a period there. I mean, he's a solid 5, and that's what he is. And I know Taijuan Walker did not pitch in the postseason, and there was a lot made of that. But you need guys like Taijuan Walker to get through 6 months and 162 games. He's a guy you hand him the ball, and he's going to give you 5, 6, 7 innings, and he's generally going to keep you in games. They had a very good record when Taijuan Walker started during the season this year, and there was a reason for that. So I look at the staff, and I think it's a really strong staff. I do think the depth is probably what prevents me from saying they're the best in baseball. But if you're taking top end talent, like every team's 8 or 9 or 10 best pitchers, they might be the best. They have really good top end talent. Ranger Suarez as a number 3 is really good. The last thing for Suarez to really conquer is durability, is to make 30 starts in the season. He's never done that, and that's a big goal for him this year. And it's a strong unit. It really is.
Okay, I'm going to go big picture again. You wrote in the beginning of your most recent, I think, notes column or questions column, the Phillies need to get off to a hotter start. I think you had some quotes from Rob Thompson about that. Like, they struggled out of the gate, I think both of the last 2 years. But how do you reconcile that with a team that made a deep postseason run? Like, when you're a team that made a deep postseason run, are you thinking what went wrong was back in April, or are you thinking what went wrong was in October? Like, how do they balance evaluating their season, and how do you balance evaluating their season?
I think, Hannah, it's a combination of both, but I think a lot of it, they do go back and look at what went wrong in the first 2 months again, because this has happened 2 years in a row now. And yes, the Phillies have made it to the World Series and were within one win of getting to the World Series in back-to-back years, but they were not in the divisional race at all in both of those years. They were out of it by June 1. And I do think that being in a divisional race and challenging the Braves, actually challenging the Braves in 2024 during the regular season is important for them. I don't know that they necessarily want to keep playing in these 3-game wildcard series, and they've mastered that. I guess they've mastered it so far, but those short series, and I know there's a debate about do you want the bye or do you want to play in the series? You want the bye. I mean, you don't want to have to risk playing a 3-game series and weird stuff happening. So I think being in a divisional race would be really important for them. Now, yes, they go back to the NLCS last year and they look at some of the things that happened with the offense and the lineup. And yes, those are things that they are thinking about and talking about, especially all the chasing they did against the Diamondbacks pitchers late in that series. But I do think one of the things that they're really going to focus on is how do we make sure that we don't have the problems in April and May that we had the last 2 years. It's important.
Hasn't part of April and May, especially going back to 2022, they were kind of slowing Zack Wheeler because he had a huge workload in 21. Hasn't it kind of been I don't want to say durability, but hey, you know what? We're a really good team. We're going to play to make the playoffs because of the injuries. And on the opposite side, the Braves were healthy, and then they went into the postseason both years. Finger issue, you can't figure that out. Injuries, but they didn't. And then Max Fried was sick the year before. Isn't it about hitting your stride at the end and maybe giving up a few games at the beginning, or do you think they really care about that? Where's that balance? It's a dichotomy of doing both, and then hey, they've had success, so
I think there's a way to hit your stride, Kratzy, in the summer, but also not fall flat on your face to start the year. And that is really what they've done the last 2 years. I mean, they have been under 500, I think, at June 1st, both the last 2 years, which was not reflective of the talent on the roster. Obviously, they made a managerial change in 2022 because they started out so badly. There's a way. I don't know that they have to go, full on, 100%, like crazy, we're not full go like right away. Like you're not trying to, you're not managing like it's game 7 in April, of course. But I think there's a way for them to have a better start, but also, be a team that's smart about how they're using their pitchers, how they're using their hitters, and just have an overall better season that is reflective of the talent on the roster and also keeps them in the divisional race. I think that's important.
Were you talking about Gabe Kapler? Not like April games aren't like October. Was that a Gabe Kapler shot right there, Matt? Because I thought you were a Gabe guy.
No shots. No shots.
Matt, thank you so much. First, I got to know before you go, are you going to get this Charlie Manuel tweet framed, turned into business cards? I don't know if you guys saw it, but Charlie had some very nice things to say about Matt Gelb.
Too nice.
about it.
Too nice. That was very kind. But I mean, really, I was appreciative. I mean, both Charlie and Missy, like, letting me, spend some time with them and having the trust in me to share, the story. I mean, that's really appreciative of that, and that's that means a lot. And those words are way too kind. And after I get off, Kratz can just roast me, for all the time interactions we had. He's seen me for what I really am.
Yeah, you make me cry every day, Matt.
All right. Well, if anyone has not read the Charlie Manuel story, you should go read it. And thank you so much for coming on, Matt.